friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. Hello, everyone. You are listening to the MC Lars podcast. This is episode 110. It is Monday, November 9th, 2020. What a crazy week it's been. This week we have Height Keech, who is a rapper on Cold Rhymes Records out of Baltimore, Maryland. And I discovered Height Keech through Grand Buffet, which is a group I was introduced to almost 20 years ago when they opened for Wesley Willis. And then they toured with my homie Sage Francis and Soul. And I've been a fan of them for years. And Lord Grunge put out Height Keech's record called Winterize the Game years ago. And so anyway, I've been following his work and it was really cool to get to talk to him. He's also friends with Michael Kill, who was on the podcast. So this is a very cool interview with an indie rapper who's been at it for years. I want to thank the Patreon Larsians for making this podcast possible. If you support at patreon.com/MCLars, not only do you get all my Star Wars songs, all my MCU songs, you know, there's dozens and dozens of stuff on there you haven't heard, but you also get exclusive merch, video, behind the scenes footage, essays, and I'm dropping my Revenge of the Sith song this week. So patreon.com/MCLars, and you get shouted out on the podcast. So shout out to the new ones, Keith and Loretta, David and Christopher, and shout out to the old ones, Amanda, Becky, and Guy. Thank you for signing up. I appreciate you. Let's check out this week's letter to Atlas. This is from Parker. Is he sleeping? Is he pooping? Just checking in. How's a little boy doing? These are some messages that you left. Wishing our little baby boy the best. Now it's time for Letters to Atlas.
Please leave a message after the tone.
Hey, Atlas. My name is Punk Curmudgeon, and your dad is awesome. I love his music and have followed him for a really long time. And he's not just a good musician. He is an amazing person. He is so awesome to interact with as a fan and supportive of us as fans. And when I have asked him to help me talk about political causes when he's on tour in my town, he took the time to do that before his show and tell everyone about a rally we were having, and he had no reason to do that. Like, it's not like he had to. He's just an amazing person, and you're so very lucky to have him. And I really just, man, you should hear it from people about how awesome he is. And your mom seems really cool too. So the fact that he picked her tells me she's really cool. Late.
No, Parker, you're really cool. Thanks, buddy. That was really sweet. I remember you had me make an announcement about a rally you were doing in Denver. I think I was opening for MC Chris. And I mentioned it on stage and we were handing out flyers. And that's what's up. I'm always down to support good causes. If you can explain why, you feel passionate about something, and, there's always good work to be done. So I appreciate you, man. Thank you very much. Thanks for leaving that message. All right. So this is my interview with Height Keech. His new record is called Wild Height Keech. It came out in September and it's awesome. Oh, one other thing I wanted to mention. So for the past few years, this podcast has been every Monday I'd put a new episode out. And with the pandemic, it's been a little hard to coordinate recording interviews with guests. Like the ones since the pandemic have all been kind of remote. So I explain to my guests, like I have a setup that I need them to do for me to sync it and yada, yada, yada. So until the pandemic lifts, we're going to be doing the podcast bi-weekly. So every other week. So that means the next episode is going to be November 23rd. So I just wanted y'all to know that. So like you don't look Monday like, yo, where's the podcast? It's going to come every other week. And then once the pandemic lifts and I'm able to actually sit down with my guests, with my setup and do it more efficiently, we'll be able to do that. But yeah, since it's hard to get in the room with people, it's impossible. We're going to be doing every other week. So this is my interview with Height Keech. Check out his new record, Wild Height Keech. Hello, friends. We are here with Height, an MC artist I've known about for like 14 years. Never had the honor of speaking with him, but I've been following his work for, I could say, over a decade and a half. And he has a new record that just dropped that he gave me a preview of. And it's been awesome, like listening to his old stuff, listening to his new stuff in preparation for this interview. So without further ado, give it up for Height. Woo!
Thank you.
We are connected because you know a lot of people I've worked with and vice versa, which is kind of crazy. We've never crossed paths.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like, especially, I was thinking about it last night, having Grand Buffet be kind of like a big part of me starting it. I feel very excited to be talking to a fellow Grand Buffet fan, because I don't have to explain that whole thing. You know what I mean? But yeah, I feel like we've run in very, very similar paths over the years, but never actually talked or anything like that.
Grunge put out Winterize the Game on his label, right? Back in the day.
Right. Grand Man Records, yeah.
Grand Man Records. And you were one of on his short-lived podcast, you were one of his first guests.
That's right. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about it. Like, how did you get started touring? Because I know you're like a road dog and you've been doing this for longer than I have on the road. Like, what's the story of how you linked with grunge and all that stuff?
Okay, as far as touring and stuff like that, I had a group that started in high school called Wounds, and we put out one album, and that's still it's on our label's Bandcamp and everything still. I still like it, even though it's like ancient. But we did one tour, and that was like, we had one guy in the group that was older. He was also in a band called Oxes, and that was like a math metal type band. So he kind of like showed me about touring, and so we went on one tour, and then I think I was like the only person that was like of the group that kind of saw a future in that. I was like, this is great, and everybody else was kind of like, I don't know. And I got a chance, and that's where we met Grand Buffet, for example, and I got invited to tour as a solo act on a few other tours, and then through Grand Buffet we were kind of like, we did our first big tour together, and we were kind of like, let's all hit the road.
And that would have been what, like early 2000s, late 90s?
Yeah. I guess my group, we did a little tour in like 98, I guess. But then our first, like, it was like the summer of 2000 was our only like quote unquote proper tour, I guess.
Wow. And then they took you, so you did a run with Grand Buffet before they linked with Wesley Willis and like before Sage Francis, and right?
Yeah, and there's also a group I have to shout out, which I think, listening to some of this podcast and stuff, I think you might really like them. There's a group called Dog and Pony that and one of the guys went on to do a thing called Bar, like BARR. That was like spoken word type thing. But like they were amazing. They were like a avant-garde comedy rap group, I guess. Like
Dog and Pony.
Yeah, it's like DOGGN Pony. Okay. And I was a fan like super early in high school. They had this tape because they had lived in Baltimore for a little while, and like they had a tape that was just the craziest shit. They had a thing of like, there can be no rhymes throughout the whole album, like no words can rhyme, and like I remember they had one song where it's just a DJ like quick mixing Take 5, the like Dave Brubeck.
Yeah.
So it's like in the Crazy Time signature, and there's no rhymes, and like and they invited me on tour as well, and that was a huge thing for me. And they also put out my first record. Like they had a label at the time and stuff like that.
Oh wow. And what was that record called?
That is just called Height. That's like it's just like the green one. That's it just has like an H on the cover.
And that's the one that, I think I bought that on Bandcamp years ago because aren't Grand Buffet on one of those songs, or one of the guys is? Yeah.
There's a song called "String Game" that they got on.
String Game. Yeah, like it's kind of cool, man, because it's kind of like how like when I'm a big ICP fan, all the artists they worked with, I always was like checking them out, and so Grand Buffet was this interesting moment. Like I've discovered soul through them and like a lot of other stuff because it hit so many of the things that I liked, and people that they worked with, like yourself. I always was like, I found that like whoever they would work with, they had good taste and they were kind of selective about it. But a lot of people listening to this podcast, like might not know them because they don't really have a presence on Spotify. There's not a ton of YouTube stuff, but their Bandcamp page has everything. But just in summation, and then we'll move on from talking about them. How would you describe them to someone who's never heard of them to like make sense, if you can?
Actually, one of the first times I ever did a show with them, it was at a bar called 8x10 in Baltimore, which I think maybe still exists. But like, my friend Zach described them as like one of the greatest like Simpsons episodes, as in like it's one of the coolest things that's like ever happened. But then also it's cool for like dum-dums too. Like if you just want to see Bart, it's like there's Bart. And so it's like it kind of hits. I always felt that was like a crazy part of like their live show is like it's just like the smartest people are all down, but then also it just like rocks everybody as like music and entertainment. If that does that make any sense?
Totally. And that the Simpsons had their moment, right? It's like Grand Buffet. What I really respect about them, and I'm kind of like in awe about, is how when it wasn't fun and when they weren't like building, they were both like, all right, well, we're going to do our own thing and we'll do this when and if it's fun, but we're not going to grind on the road as much as we did. And like that is, to me, that is so dope because it's like a painter burning their masterpiece or something, right? Like, let's keep it moving. Like we got other things to do. And that, I don't know, to me, that's just super cool when artists drop the mic when they don't want to do it the same level. You know what I mean?
That's really interesting because I at the time I felt very differently. Like I felt like touring with them in some of their later years where they were like sort of like, yeah, we're not really seeing a path forward. I felt really sad and I felt like, no, this is all wrong. You got to like keep going. But yeah, everybody has their own set of reasons why they would, be wanting to do it or not do it, and like. Yeah, it's like it does. I feel like that does make sense. I feel like you offer some perspective.
Dropping the mic. I mean, it's like an interesting thing, man, because it's like as an artist now, I'm sure you can relate to this. You really have to put so much of your energy into figuring out the algorithms, being on social media. Like we linked through Twitter, which was cool because I'm always curious about what you're posting, but like that's a cool way to network and build. But also, the internet can be exhausting. And I feel like in a way they had this punk rock mind state of being like, well, that's corporate controlled. We have this stuff that exists outside of that. And we're not going to like spend all our time trying to go viral or figure out the algorithms. And that's like I don't know. It's a different perspective to what like the millennials and younger artists are doing, with trying to be constantly putting out content, trying to, just hack all the algorithms, which in a way doesn't feel artistic sometimes. I wonder if you could speak on that.
Well, I've had a realization recently. It's funny, like listening to, like I was telling you earlier, I got to listen to a bunch of episodes of this podcast in preparation, and they were great. And one thing. I sort of got a sense that like a lot of these artists have sort of had like high highs and low lows. Like Like it's kind of like, I mean, I'm sure it's that way for everybody, but like there's times where more people are paying attention, times when less people are paying attention, and people take different approaches to doing that, you know? Like it seems like now there's like Patreon and all these things, and it's like there's all this hustling you can do, but I think a mistake that I've made in my time is trying to like hustle my way into people liking what I do, if that makes any sense.
I totally relate. Yeah.
I don't know, but I think you're doing it right, because I think it's like, I think you've found an audience and now you're like, how do I interact with them and keep them engaged and stuff like that. And I feel like with me, like I was thinking about it the other day, like I've done various podcasts and stuff since like early 2000s, I guess, or 2005 or something like that. But like, I guess I feel like you can't podcast your way into having fans, but I feel like you can entertain your fans with a podcast. I think. Does that make sense?
It does. And then there are those rare people like Mark Maron or Joe Rogan, where like their podcast becomes so iconic and kind of transcends them as a performer and as a writer. And maybe as comedians, it's different than you and I as rapper producers. Like it's a different thing. But it's interesting, man, because like listening to your podcast, I feel like I get I've kind of get an insight into you as a person, and then listening to your stuff with Shark Tank and your solo stuff. It's like, it's like, you're right. It doesn't get new fans, but fans who already are feeling you kind of like be like, oh, I understand this person. I let this long form content wash over me because I'm sick of all the little binary data bites that are flying at my face. I want something that like immerses me into the person's reality. And so
totally,
you know what I'm saying? So that's cool. You were an early adopter of the format. Like that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was just because it was like, it was some of our friends in Pittsburgh started the company Libsyn, which like was the early host, and it still is, I think, for a lot of podcasts. But yeah, it was one of these dumb things where like they were like, what would you think about doing a podcast? And then I just started doing it that day, having never heard the word podcast before. And it's like, I don't know. I think some of that stuff was a mistake on my end of just being like, I mean, I think it's good to be ambitious and be like, try to stay on top of things. But I think it can be, what I've tried to do in recent years more is try to lead with the music, you know,
right?
Even if that feels like, I mean, there just are less people that want to hear music in general, but so what? You know what I mean?
Well, and I remember Grunge was on the Libsyn, and he did an episode with Dave
Mansueto,
Mansueto, and I thought that was a cool interview, and like that was like, okay, if you knew people on the forefront of these technologies 15 years ago, you might jump into it, and then somehow you become like a tastemaker, and then it becomes part of your story where like you are, this is something I've done forever. Like that's what I hear when I talk to people about you and stuff. Like, for example, Michael Keel was like, yeah, he's been doing podcasts forever. I'm like, that is an interesting thing because a lot of people, number one, don't have the patience to do that. And number two, weren't early adopters. And so I don't know, man. I think it's like, my point is there's no one right way to do things, right?
Definitely not.
But leading with the music is always smart, and that's what I've been coming home to this year. And like, I wanted to talk to you about your new record because every morning when I go jogging, I was listening to the New York Times daily podcast. But when you sent me the pre-release, I put that on instead. And instead of hearing all this freaking horrible news, it just put me in a really good mood, man. And it was like,
oh, awesome.
It's so good. And it's so, it reminds me of my favorite Buck 65 stuff. It reminds me of like, Ideas Oliver Hart record, and I love the 60s timeless style, and it's so cool to me to think like we're at a point where like independent artists can find their own lane, do something that's outside of the mainstream like you, and also tell a story that's musically interesting. So I went through and I like came up with a few questions about each track. But my first question for you, man, is so do you produce your own beats too?
Yeah.
That's tight.
I'd say maybe the last like 5 albums. I feel like I didn't at first, and then I would say I just like over the last 12 years or something, just gradually started doing more of the production stuff myself.
So back in the day, so like for instance, the String Game album, Height, that you didn't produce those beats necessarily?
Not at all. That was the main guy was a guy called Shields. And then it's everybody from that group I was talking about earlier, Wounds. So there's also Bow and Arrow, Jones, and Kiddick.
There's samples on this. We're not going to get into samples. Do you trip on like whether the algorithms are going to find it, or do you just keep it moving?
I do. I definitely do, and I guess recently though I've started to think like, how big of a deal could it be? Like, I don't know. I do worry about it when I produce for other people, because it's like you're sort of just handing them a problem. If they, if the song ever gets like a licensing deal or anything like that. But I don't know. I've realized like I don't really care. Like I don't think people are that worried about these like Bandcamp releases having samples, and it does mess stuff up if you want to do licensing and stuff, but I don't know. I've never even really had too many opportunities with that. And the one time ever that I was involved with at all with clearing a sample, it actually was totally fine. And do you ever clear samples? Or I don't know if you wanted to get into this.
That's a good question. I every Thursday I post an old video and talk about it, and this podcast will air later, but I have a song where I sample Iggy Pop, and
Yeah.
and I had to. It was expensive. It was $7,000 to clear the sample.
Okay.
And it was but it was a really cool sample, and I think the song it worked well. But
Yeah.
it was paying lawyers and all this. It was expensive, man. I didn't expect it to be that much. Had I known, I wouldn't have done it. But I tried to. There was one example. I sampled. Do you know the show Trailer Park Boys? Have you heard of it?
Yeah.
So I have a song about, actually it's with Jesse Dangerously, where it's about the cop, Randy, and Jim Leahy, and about their relationship. And I sampled from the show, and that got flagged, and the album got taken down. And now there's this permanent hold on my TuneCore where if I take out if I don't leave $50, it rejects me taking money out, because that money apparently is supposed to go to the sample. They took it down. It was like a nightmare, man. And I was traveling, so
Yeah.
So my point is, movies and show samples seem to be more problematic than like if you take like a 60s groove, you know what I mean? Because the computers find that stuff. Do you know what I mean?
That's so weird, because that's been my theory, and my Shark Tank bandmates all disagree with me.
About movie samples?
Yeah, like we've had some movie samples, and I've always, you're confirming my theory that it's more dangerous for like the algorithm.
I used to think if you got caught with a sample, you'd be banned from these platforms. But because we're making these companies so much money and we're not seeing much, I don't think they would ban us, because then it would mean less profit, and they just keep it moving,
I think so, yeah. And like, yeah, I don't know, like there was one sample we had to clear. Why am I drawing a blank on the name? The band Magma, the French like prog band, and
was that Shark Tank?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they were 100% cool with it, and just like we had help from a publishing guy, and he was like, "This went as good as it could possibly go," and they were just down, and it's like, and that was like clearing it after the fact. That was like we already put it out, and they could just tell us,
Did someone flag it, or how did it happen?
It was like it was weird. It was like we had this song. It was the bonus track from our second album, but it went gold in Canada. It was like
Out for a Rip.
Yes, Out for a Rip.
Oh, that had a sample?
Yes.
Ooh, and Grunge produced that song, right?
Yeah. And Grunge and Mickey Free.
Okay.
And that was like, it's always fucked up to try to figure this shit out after, but I think that's kind of makes sense to be like, okay, if this gets attention, then we figure out what to do. But basically we had to sign like we signed a 1-song publishing deal to like get some licensing shit going just with that song.
And so then was it an advance or did they get a back end? If you can speak about it, I'm curious.
To be honest, I can't even remember how it went down.
Yeah.
But it was a percentage. Like they were just like, we were like, what's up with maybe this percentage? And they were like, fine. Like for all I know, they have like 20 different songs that sample. I mean, they definitely have that kind of catalog,
That's what's up. And that's free money for them. So why not? It's funny, man, because my drummer is always finding weird stuff on the internet, and he sent me out for a rip, and I was like, wait, I know Shark Tank. I'm like, yo, this is the bonus track from Fun Youngs. Like I knew the song, and he sent me the video. It's so weird how like, when other people in your circle introduce you to things and it all circles back. Like that must have been interesting when that happened, because Shark Tank, it seems like that started as kind of just like a fun side project, right? And to have this huge 8 million plays on one song on Spotify, it's crazy.
Right, and the song was like, it was like a side project of a side project, because it's like the secret bonus track on your side project. And like, yeah, that was one of the strangest chapters of my life, honestly, because like, I did, I think Grunge felt a little bit like, he felt like that's cool that this novelty song is popping off, but he wasn't like amped about like, oh, I'm going to get back on the road and, behind this novelty song. And like, so like Be Rich from Shark Tank, he kind of popped off his own touring career, and I went with him for a lot of that stuff, and that was definitely
cool.
That was cool. It was really cool to do like a tour where you can play like every weird town in Canada and people come. It was really fun.
So you played the Canadian tour with them?
Yeah.
Did you go out as Be Rich, or did you go out as Shark Tank, or Be Rich and Height Keech? Like how was it billed? It
was just billed as Be Rich, and I would just like be there, kicking a few rhymes and stuff.
I wonder if you can relate to this, man. And we'll get back to talking about your record. The reason why I feel like we're similar in that, like, we both toured with a lot of different people as a solo act, as support, as whatever. People tell me that they like to bring me on tour because I'm easy to get along with and I bring like a positive vibe. And I think that is so important because like you get put in all these weird situations, like for me, like with different bands, different rappers, and you have to learn when to be quiet, when to be nice, when to be helpful. And that sometimes becomes more of an asset than like how good you are at rapping or whatever, like how cool you are in weird situations. Do you ever feel that?
Oh, I totally agree. And sometimes sometimes I forget what, like, I guess I've just been doing the tour thing so long that I'm like, yeah, this is what you do. But like, sometimes I forget that there's a wide variety of ways that people can be on tour, and people can be very not cool. And it's like, and you forget that that's an asset that you have, but it is,
It's good. And I guess if you want to be humble about it, you don't want to be like, oh, I'm the nicest, easiest person on tour. You can't think like that. You just got to be showing up and be helpful. And, always during the pandemic, it's like, and also the fact that we just had a kid, I won't be touring till next year. And I miss that novelty of being in new places and traveling. And I'm wondering, like, for you, like having a new record out, are you having to think how to promote it in different ways than touring? Or have you been, like, how's that been for you?
Well, it's been very interesting, just having to like wipe every show off the calendar. Like, and there weren't a lot for me this year because I was trying to have a slim year in that regard. But it's funny, like at the beginning of this year, I told myself like I'm not doing a lot of shows this year, and I feel like I had already fucked that up by like early February. Like I just said yes to all these things I didn't really want to do, and so it's like, damn, I already committed to like drive and play this show in West Virginia, whatever, and like having just everything be canceled. I can't lie, I kind of liked it, and like and like it made me realize like I have to get better at saying no, you know, because it's so easy to say yes to something you don't want to do and then make up a reason that you want to do it. Like be like, oh, well, this will give me a chance to run through this new song or whatever. But like, I don't know. It's made me, looking forward, it's made me be like wanting to be way more intentional with what I do or don't do, you know?
I think it's making us all sharper, and it's making us like realize why we do it. Going back to what you're saying, how the music is what should lead. And I think, yeah, man, like that you can get into a pattern where, and I know a lot of people listening to this podcast are like indie artists, indie creators, where you just get used to it and you're like, this is how things are done. And the past month I took a break from social media, and it was like so cool because I was like, oh, this is what I like about these technologies. This is what I don't like about giving up my brain and my time. And this is when I do go on tour, I'm going to make sure I'm really ready. I'm doing something different and I appreciate it, you know? And so, yeah, it's like restarting all of our computers in a way, this pandemic.
I definitely think so. And I don't know. I mean, obviously it's fucked up because so many venues are closing forever, you know, and that's horrible. But like, I do wonder if when there's touring again, the negotiations between like the bands and venues and everything will be a little different. Like this might sound messed up, but like, I just wonder if some of these venues that are trying to keep things going without shows are realizing how much they need shows.
Okay.
In a way they haven't before. Like, you know, I see these venues that are like, hey, we're still selling pizza out on the curb or whatever. Yeah. And it's like, even the worst show, they're, you know, even the worst show makes money sometimes for these venues, you know, and it's like,
totally.
I don't know. I wonder, that's just a thought I've had. Like, I wonder if these touring acts and local acts as well might come at it with a little more demand or something when they come back. Peter
was saying this. Peter Agostin was saying that, you know, a lot of people are going to stop. Like venues are going to close, but like people who just got into the music business or recent people who've been having like trending momentum might stop, and there will be this whole like snow globe shaking up where not all artists want to continue. So the artists that do want to, you're saying maybe the venues will see more value in them coming. Is that kind of what you mean too?
I think so. Yeah. Like I think, I don't know. I just think there's a lot of things where just having no shows, it's like, here's another example that my friend Justin brought up. Like, you know, there's been like discussion of like within indie rock and indie hip hop and stuff of like, you know, I feel like they've had their own like Me Too moments and stuff. And like,
yeah.
Like he was saying like, he thinks when things come back, people should feel a little more comfortable, like wanting things to be the way that they are, like that they want them to be. Like, I don't know. He was just saying like these shows where it's just like all men all the time and men kind of making every decision and all men on the bill, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't know. We might come into it with a little bit of a different awareness now of like, well, there was no shows and everybody lived. So, like it might not be as crazy as it seems to alter things a little bit to like diversify. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you're saying. So like the way there was like this hegemonic way of doing things has being shooken up, and now like people of a certain gender, whatever, don't need to hog the spotlight like we have been.
Yeah.
That's cool. I like that. On your album, so the track "The Boy," this is a really cool, evocative introduction. And what's the story about that little sample? Unless you don't want to give away your secrets.
Well, damn, man, I just contradicted myself because that is from a documentary.
Okay. You could tell me what it's about without citing it if you don't want.
Yeah. It's about an artist that that inspired me a lot, particularly during the quarantine. I won't say who it is because there's only one documentary about it.
Yeah.
But it was just a documentary about an uncompromising artist, and it made me realize that we all try to be uncompromising, but it inspired me to remember there's always levels to being uncompromising, if that makes sense, and to just like we're all comfortable in what we do when we feel good about it and stuff, but there's always a way to push for another level of that, if that makes sense.
One of the themes I got is that it's like a lot of the themes are like longing to be in these open Western spaces with the titles, longing to come home, longing to explore. And I wonder if you have this nostalgia for being on the road and early touring years, or what it's about. Cause that was like one of the questions I wanted to ask you.
Yeah. Cause like I said, like I definitely came into this year, like not wanting to tour anyway. And like some of those words about just like missing all that stuff, it's like, it was just like honesty. You know what I mean? Like I was trying to not see it that way. I was trying to be like, well, I'm here and I'm doing this, but like, I don't know. I don't know. Do you have like wanderlust and stuff? I would imagine you probably do.
Yeah. I mean, I miss, something I miss is driving. Like I love driving through the rural parts of Northern California, like whether I'm on tour or just for fun, the lakes, the rivers, like the beauty of the West. Like right now we're on the East Coast and it's all good, but I miss that. I miss the travel and being a new dad. It's like, I got this little guy we're taking care of. So I do dream about it and I do miss that. And that's, I guess I figure why I've been doing this so long. So maybe we both relate on that.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I really, it'll even be like I'm just watching a movie or something and there's like the desert or like a road or something. I'm like, I just get this feeling of like, like I have to be moving around and be out there or something,
And look, what is the Northern Lights Lounge is what made me think of that idea, like being in this beautiful faraway place. I don't know. It's just, you're able to, what I like about your lyrics is that my stuff is so reference heavy and concrete, this. Your stuff is poetic and evocative in a way that you get the vibe without, you don't hit your audience over the head with these messages. It kind of is more of like an impressionist painting, I feel like. And that song stood out for me. Baltimore backsteps too, like that, like about coming home, but also wanting to be away,
Yeah. Oh man, I really appreciate you saying that. It's like, I feel like you never know, I mean, it's interesting because I'm sure you have some similar things, like say like on tour or something, there's always a desire, like if you're playing for a group of people that have never heard you before, you don't want to be too like obtuse or like mysterious or something, like because people aren't gonna, I mean, people can barely hear the words half the time anyway,
right?
So you don't want to be like, if you can hear them, they're all like crazy or something. But like, so like, I don't know. I always feel like it's like a balancing act because it's like, I'm glad you said that, like impressionistic, because that's like, yeah, it's like people, hopefully you can be kind of a little more abstract without people like having to like look at all your words with a fine-tooth comb to know what you're talking about, I guess.
Yeah, man. And it's also interesting how something that I think serves this album well is it's very new school in that your songs aren't that long, man. Like a lot of them, most of them are under 2 minutes. And
yeah,
that's cool because then you can like have these brushstrokes that kind of drive things forward instead of like, you know, some of the, if you listen to like some of the old Def Jux stuff, like where they're like just rhyming like obtusely and the song's like 6 minutes, the old Anticon stuff, it's cool, but it's like also a little exhausting.
Right. Yeah, I've always been in favor of short songs. And I don't know, I've always felt like so many of my favorite eras of rap, that's the thing that I don't like. Like I'll go back and listen to like my favorite shit and I'll be like, why is this like 6 minutes long? You know?
Do you ever find it like it's so jarring, you listen to a song before 2011, you're always like, wait, there's a third verse? Right? Because fools don't do more than a verse sometimes now or two. I'm always like, yo, this must be from, 2010. It was like this change when everything changed around them, right?
I remember reading, do you ever read these Chuck D Terror Dome blogs?
No.
Where it's just,
I should check that out.
I don't know if he's still doing them, but it's like it was just him going off on the Public Enemy site about, you know, the state of music and hip hop and stuff, and he was real big on like no more third verses, and that made me think, well, you can have a third, but like change the beat up or do something to like, I don't know, because I feel like it's kind of like there's a verse and then there's the hook and then it's back to the verse. That's a good feeling of like B back to A and then B, right. But then it's like, do we need to do it again? You know?
Yeah, and then like but you have the really cool posse track. Was it Whirlwind, right?
Yeah.
And you have a bunch of guests, but they do short little verses. I thought that was kind of cool. The whole thing is 3 minutes. I like the guy, and it sounds modern because you have the guy who talks about hydroxychloroquine.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, topical. Who is that MC? Because they stood out for me.
That's Goldzilla from Detroit. Okay. He was in a group called Barter Boys, which is incredible, out of Detroit, with a guy called Doc Waffles, who I also love his style a whole lot. Have you played in Detroit a lot?
Yeah, I played, I opened for a lot of bands there, but they're always, I go there probably every few years. But, we usually play Ann Arbor, to be honest. We play the Blind Pit.
Oh, yeah.
How about you?
I mean, that's always been one of my favorite places, and that's where, like, I feel like a lot of people that, Mr., who I do the Cold Rhymes records with, he's in Detroit, and that's always, he's been a collaborator for a long time, and there's always been a lot of people from Detroit that I've worked with. I've always felt it was like a hotbed of tight stuff. I
have one more question about your album, then I want to talk about Baltimore. I think that the last song, This Brutal World is the Only World There Is, it's a really beautiful song. I'd never heard that where like you sample something and then did you write a new melody, or did she, or how did that come about?
I mean, I wrote it as a melody where it's crazy. I wrote it and sang it, and like a few friends of mine were like, yeah, you can't put that on the album. like I'm not a great singer. And I thought it was like, okay, but I was like, let me see what's up with getting someone that can really sing on here. And then she came up with like all the harmony. She re-sang it and then sang all these harmonies and everything.
Okay, so I wanted to talk, Height, about Baltimore. It's a city I love to play. I always play. We play the, what's it called? The Metro Gallery.
Oh, yeah.
We hit that venue up pretty much every year, and they always have a lot of love for us. What's it like living there, and what's the scene like?
I absolutely love Baltimore as far as music. I always feel like, through the ages, it always has a tight version of whatever music there is. That you would expect to have like on the East Coast. Like it's not like they got this like Tex-Mex music going or anything. But like there's like a ton of Baltimore club stuff. Are you familiar with that at all?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like a big inspiration. I'd say maybe not as much now. It's kind of died off, but that was a big inspiration for like almost anyone that made music here. And there's always been like a really strong like noise and post-punk kind of scene too, and like avant-garde free jazz kind of scene. There's just always been a whole lot of stuff going on, you know.
So let's talk about what are some of the differences between the Baltimore club stuff and like the Miami bass, because in my mind they're kind of conflated. They're similar, right?
Well, I had a friend that described it to me like the production style of Baltimore club is it has a feeling of you listening to it and you're like, of course that's not how you do it. like everything is really, really raw, and it's like stuff will like not even be like looped up right, like everything's like chopped off, and it's just like you know I've always wanted to learn so much more about how they make those beats, because I mean, I know some of the breaks and stuff, but I don't know, like, what are the common, or back then, like, what were the common samplers? There's certain breaks they use again and again, like the think break and stuff that they give it that sound. And then there's like certain auxiliary sounds that you'll hear again and again. And it's really warm and soulful, and like, there's a song that I feel like is maybe the greatest Baltimore club song called Dance My Pain Away, which is like, okay. I feel like it's like they write like songs. I think it's not like just dance music songs or something.
Is the Peaches thing like the Pain Away? Is that a reference to that, or did that come out after? You know that Peaches song?
Yeah. Oh, I never thought about that. I'm not really sure.
Okay. And a lot of what is the Wham City, like that's the Dan Deacon's crew, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of more experimental. That's not like club stuff, right?
Right. Well, it's interesting. All of those people, they all started in like around New York. Like, right. Like it was like this exodus of like 40 people from like Purchase College, like right outside of New York to Baltimore, and and there's so many talented people came here all at once because of that. I feel like
interesting.
I feel like my man Mickey Free, who I mentioned earlier, he should get acknowledged as like playing a role in that. Like I feel like he went to school up there for a while, and he kind of convinced them all like it would be a lot easier to move here than move to New York or something like that.
And SUNY Purchase is from listening to the podcast where Grand Buffet had opened for Wesley on a Dan Deacon show, and where Wesley's manager or whatever saw them, right? Like going back to that moment in music.
Yeah, Dan was having all kinds of shows and bringing me and Mickey there and Grand Buffet.
That's so cool. Do you know Sex? Have you worked with him, or have you done shows with him?
Yeah, it's wild, man. I've known him since I was like 13 or 14. Like,
that's awesome.
He was in a band called the Idea Men that they were like, I don't know. It's so weird. The word emo, it's meant 1,000 different things, but I feel like what it meant at that time was like
more post-hardcore.
Yeah, those like DC kind of bands. I can't think of. I feel Rites of Spring is like. Yeah, it was more like
or
that.
Fugazi kind of had that proto emo vibe, the post-punk.
Yeah, he was in a band like that, and I felt like he just like looked like an adult when he was like 13. And he was just in a band with adults. So I just thought he was older, but like he was a kid my age. And and he did that, and then he did a band called Day of Man as Man, and then he started putting out more of his electronic stuff. And we've worked together a lot, like early on. There's an album which I think he hates and has like hidden from the world, but he did an album called Tall, Dark, and Handcuffed.
Yeah, I love that album.
Oh, tight. Yeah, and I'm on there a couple times.
Woo! Whoa! That record is so cool because it's so proto in my genre, like proto nerdcore in a way. Okay, so you're on that record, and I'm very familiar with that record. So that maybe was where I heard you. You're on that K through 12 Days of Hell.
Yeah.
Ah, wow, that's a great record. That's awesome. That's what's up, man. So you were. So it's so funny, like going back to that thing about Shark Tank. It's all these connections and everything you get. It's always fun to find these connections.
Yeah, and Ryan was somebody that was like, I think about this now. He was organized and on top of shit in a way back then that I'm still trying to kind of get now. It's weird to think about. Like he was somebody that was so young that was like, I remember like Rolling Stone did a write up on that album and stuff like that. And like,
wow.
And like, it's just weird to see like somebody that's like barely out of high school and is like getting shit done and like hustling, you know, like maybe it's not as weird now, but like at the time it seemed so crazy to me. And like, I feel like I could barely keep up. You know what I mean?
Well, and that dude had a skill set that really resonated with that time because in a way, he's come up on this podcast before. He predated Lil Peep in that it was like singing, but rapping, like the skinny, like very creative guy, merging all these genres, doing something for all the different like indie heads of that era. But really, I felt like what was brilliant about him was maximizing the diverse album release with different deals, with different labels. And so like, if once you got into it, you're like, oh, he's got this, he's got this, he's got this. But when you look at a SoundCloud playlist or a Spotify playlist, it's a bit overwhelming now. But back then, that was like having a lot of different projects was like a really cool way to build your brand. Now, I feel like it can be distracting and maybe helpful, but like, I don't know. For that era, the way he was doing it was like brilliant, if that makes sense, doing a million different projects.
Yeah, I remember like driving up to play a show with him in Philly, and the whole time he's just talking about like, okay, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and we're going to do this. And then like we get to the show and there's like this Philly label, like people from this Philly label come up to him and give him a box of CDs for this other album he just finished that he hadn't even mentioned or something, which I don't know. I thought that was like really cool.
And now he told me, I've been trying to get him on the podcast, but he said he works at the school where Tupac went to.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
He's like a theater or music or art teacher there.
Yeah. Baltimore School for the Arts. I didn't realize that. That's awesome.
That's what's up. So we've gone for quite a while and you've answered all my questions. And I think it would be cool, Height, to end with This Brutal World as like a outro, if you don't mind.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I want also you to plug your podcast and all your social media and just give you the rest of the episode and anything that's on your mind we haven't talked about because I've been talking a lot. So I want to pass it to you to plug whatever you want. All
right. So I would suggest everybody check out heightkeech.com. Check out coldrhymesrecords.com. And we do have a Cold Rhymes Records podcast on our SoundCloud page and everywhere else too. So if people want to check that out, it's called This Cold Rhymes Podcast. And yeah, man, thank you so much for letting me get on. It was an honor, man. You're great. You're a great interviewee. And thanks. I was going to say that. So the album is out, and it's the new record is called Wild Height Keech, and I got it from Bandcamp, but I saw it's on Spotify and everything. So yeah, support my man because he's doing a lot. And you're gonna if some of you are new to this artist, he has a lot of stuff. So there's between the podcasts and all his music,
It's fun. It's like a treasure trove of really good, timeless, fun stuff. And so, yeah, I'm glad to have you on, man, because you span the different scenes, different genres. We know a lot of the same people, and it's like something. For years, when I started this, I was like, I want to get Height on one day, and we made it happen. So this is tight.
Man, it was my pleasure, man. Thank you.
Cherie, you're dead and gone. I thought I heard you in the evening banging on, but that's just something that I got myself to think. Radiators clanging hiss, the moon is overgrown and pink. 10 million memories, now never spoke. 10 million visions drift away into the smoke. There's one reality, and here it goes again. Coming down off every mountain, crawling out from glen to glen.
This brutal world's the only world there is. Brutal deserts, brutal mountain, brutal sea. This brutal world's the only world there is. But we can make it into what it's gotta be.
Hey kid, walk straight. These days fly by. Time fades away, they'll have you run until you die. You tried to do everything they said to do. Now it all seems kinda useless from this modern point of view. This corny kind of world where we're all stuck. Your blood's a battery for those with all the luck. Maybe someday soon we'll turn this car around, but some days not today. Let's watch the walls come tumbling down.
This brutal world's the only world there is. Brutal deserts, brutal mountains, brutal sea. This brutal world's the only world there is. But we can make it into what it's gotta be. This brutal world's the only world there is. Brutal deserts, brutal mountains, brutal sea. This brutal world's the only world there is. But we can make it into what it's gotta be.
Thank you for being on the show, Height Keech. In 2 weeks, we're going to have my man Theosin, Brad, who is from upstate New York. He produced all the vocals on the Dewey Decibel system. He's also a rapper, and he has his master's in engineering, electrical engineering, I think, from Rochester Institute of Technology. So really interesting guy, good, cool dude, a close friend. He's going to be on the week of Thanksgiving. That is November 23rd. So we're doing every other week until the pandemic lifts and I can actually be in the studio with my guests. Until then, we'll be doing these remotely, bi-weekly. Star Wars song dropping this Friday. Check out Revenge of the Sith, my Revenge of the Sith rap. I appreciate y'all. And good job, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. That was tight. I know maybe some of you didn't vote for Joe Biden, and if that's the case, it's okay. But, you know, now it's time for us to heal, and truth and science are tight. So holler. Let's bring them back. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Peace.